Hello and welcome to this special live broadcast for Own Your Value and Earn Your Worth. So firstly, thank you so much for being here. You know, the reason that I wanted to create Own Your Value, the course, and to do this free broadcast tonight is because a couple of different reasons. Number one, I've worked for 14 years in the personal growth and spirituality field. I never ever thought I would work in this field. I certainly, I didn't, I don't know why, because I was a fan of personal growth and transformation work, and I would buy books and I went to many workshops, yet I never imagined me being part of it. And so therefore, for me, owning my value, not only in what I was capable of in terms of perhaps my gift for other people or how my gift could help other people access their own, but also the money side of it. You know, one of the kind of biggest ironies for me was when I caught a few years into doing my work and I was still a little triggered about charging certain amounts for certain things. I reflected how so many of the years leading up to that, I had put workshops on credit cards and not thought twice about it because the value I felt from what I received in those workshops was huge and was informing and changing my life. So it was very interesting for me that even though I was someone who valued this field of work, because I never thought I would be in it, and because I had never been an entrepreneur before where I really was full-time working for myself as an adult, it was a real shift, and it took me some time. And there are still little things that I go through now on a bigger scale, but some of the core things, finding a sense of worth in myself around what I did. And sometimes knowing that you don't always feel a sense of worth, but if other people are feeling worth around your work, it's worth doing anyway because of the experience that you get through giving. So it's a very big topic, and it's one that I have lived, and it's one that I've helped many, many people with. And one of the reasons I wanted to create the course, or the other reason that I mentioned a moment ago, is I held a training in San Diego in May, and it was called Impact the World. And it was for creatives, healers, entrepreneurs who want to impact the world, who want to do something that helps or contributes to the world in some way using their own skills, their own resources, whether it's that you're setting up a charity, whether it's that you're a healer, whether it's that you want to create some other kind of solution for somebody. And it was so interesting to me that we had 65 people in that room who had come a long way. We had people from Australia. I think there were 10 different countries represented in that room, and brilliant people all doing really great stuff in the world, and everything from the beginner right through to somebody who had, a few people had successful businesses that were working, but they'd come because they wanted to take it to the next level. And what hit me in that room was that some of the key modules that I taught live in that room that really hit people were around value, meaning the fear level rose in the room, the slight discomfort, and it really struck me. And so I knew coming out of that I wanted to do a course called Own Your Value, where some of the elements of Impact the World are brought into this course, but there is also a real focus on what is the personal journey that we go through, and how do we intuitively, practically, and energetically understand what's happening for us. So I've benefited from several courses, business coaches, things I've learned online, and I've often pieced them all together. So for example, I will go to someone who works a bit more with intuition and energy healing for this side of my entrepreneur, meaning my inner world. And then I'll go to a business strategist to learn more about the business. But it's rare that that I've met people who are merging the two. And when I look at what's out there in the world, I see some great courses, but they tend to be one or the other. They're just on your inner world, or they're all about how to build a business. So I wanted to do one that fuses the two and is going to give equal focus to the part of us as entrepreneurs or creators that can be a bit like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't know if it's going to work, and I hope it's going to work, and sometimes it gets like that. And then also the side of us that actually has something inside us, a calling or a skill that we feel we want to contribute and bring out into the world, and that desire is there too. So sometimes you're walking a tightrope between the part of you that wants to move forward and the part of you that's like, ah. And I've really tracked that journey, both in my own journey the last 14 years, but also with lots of people that I've worked with. I mentor people now, and for many, many years, I did, well, actually for 12 and a half years, I did personal one-on-one sessions with many thousands of people all over the world. So I got to see that relationship between how we feel inside and what we'll do in the outside world, and how it's a very fine line sometimes. So that's why Own Your Value and Earn Your Worth has been created. And as the course title suggests, it's teaching healers, creatives, and entrepreneurs to value their gifts and increase their income. Because money as an energy is an important part of what we're doing. And I meet people in the spiritual community who are very anti-money, who might be standing for a complete change to the economic system. And I definitely hear some of those arguments, and I don't disagree that a lot of the things in our economic system I don't agree with. But if you're living in it, meaning if you're not somebody who is either living off the grid or has plenty of money and doesn't need to work for a living, the rest of us in the middle somewhere, we are actually needing to use income either to sustain our own lives or to sustain the lives of the team that we might hire that work with us. And also then you get to be in a position where you can fund free work, and you can put free or very inexpensive work out into the world at a really high level, which is one of my passions. I really like keeping the quality level as high as we can, not just of the content that goes out and the teaching, but also the production level and the user experience. So that's one of my personal passions. And that's why I wanted to help any of you who are interested in what I might be able to offer you on your journey to learn as you step into a greater level of owning your value and earning your worth. And we also have 2 labs. So the Own Your Value labs are also part of the course. So the course is going to be over 12 hours of material, and that's conservative. We think it's actually more like 15 or 16. We're just totting up the final numbers right now. But it's going to be a large amount of material, a private Facebook group, and then 2 focused Own Your Value labs where I will take questions from those of you in the course so that we can make sure that anything that hasn't been covered by the modules, some of my guest interviews, can be scooped up when we go to the Own Your Value labs. So that's a little overview of the course. But for today, you guys sent in some awesome questions. So if you're watching this in the future, when we threw open this broadcast, we invited people to submit questions, and there were some really brilliant ones that came in. So I'm happy to sit here and offer whatever I can intuitively or practically give to your questions. And I tend to find that whenever you do this kind of thing, even if you didn't ask a question, somebody else will have been a voice or a question for something that you might need. So to be the voice of your questions, I invite Amanda Doog into the broadcast. Amanda is the creative director for my company. She also is my content consultant for the courses. So Amanda works very closely on both co-producing the course, but also managing the content. So she's deeply connected to you guys and this theme. And she's also stayed up very late in England to be with us tonight. So hi, Amanda.
Hello, everyone. Yes, it's 1:10 in the morning in London, but I have a lot of Kundalini energy at the moment, so it's just fun. It's great.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for being with us. And I know we got a lot of great questions, right?
We did. The questions are just fantastic. So I'll get going on those in a second. But there was one thing, Lee. when we were talking just before the broadcast about a question that lots of people have been asking about the course, which is how is it different from other courses out there who tackle this subject? And I thought you might want to speak to that a little bit before I get going.
Yeah, I think kind of as I was touching on a little bit a few minutes ago, one of the things for me was I wanted the course to be a fusion of who we need to become and allow ourselves to become inside, and what some of the outside actions that we might take that can support that are. So, for example, a kind of inner and outer workout for your sense of value in the world and for the value that you're communicating to other people, because those two things go hand in hand. So, for example, if I have a low sense of value, Amanda, and you've said to me, "Oh, Lee, will you come and paint my house?" And I'm like, "Oh, I've set myself up as a painter, but I don't really know if I can paint a house." And I go, "Oh, okay, I'll maybe I'll give it a go." That's not gonna set our relationship off right. But we can overcome those things by knowing you've got some fear, but going, "Yep, okay, I've agreed to do it. I'll come in and do it." And so for me, the balance between those two states is a big key with owning your value. I hear some people say, I have to get myself and my self-esteem up completely first. I don't believe that's true. And then I hear other people who say, oh, I have to know business strategy. I have to know how to run a business. That's also not true. In both cases, you just start, and you start one piece at a time and you commit to the action. So Own Your Values, really, it is an action-based course, but it's about taking action on your inner thoughts, feelings, and where you're at with your value right now, and what can you be doing in your work and in your outer world and in how you present your work that can raise the value of it for others, and find that meeting point.
That's great. Yeah, that's perfect. Shall I ask the first question?
Yes, please.
Okay. When you first started launching your soul's work and passion, how did you handle and manage your fear? Fear of sharing your gifts openly, fear that it won't work out, fear and urgency over lack of money, and afraid that you can't afford to take time to build it. How did you overcome these fears, and what practical steps did you implement to make it happen?
Great question. And in a way, it taps onto what I just said a minute ago. You keep going. And I remember how it worked for me was it was someone else's faith in me that suggested I become a reader. I was an intuitive for my friends, and only people that I knew were kind of open to it. And I'd been channeling for about 5 years privately at the time for myself and asking lots of questions. I also had the ability to be intuitive about people, but I was just coming to terms with that, really. And I think for me, and I think this is true for most intuitives, the proof is in the pudding. You could sit there and say, oh, I am a great intuitive. Well, try out your intuition on a number of people, not just one, not just two, but on a number of people, and see what your hit rate is. Because if you have a high hit rate, let's say you do a reading for 10 people, you might find one of them is a little skeptical, or you didn't really quite use the right language, or they kind of go, yeah, it was okay, but they might not be very enthusiastic about it. And that's okay. But if the other 9 all had a very positive experience, then you know that your hit rate is high. So for me, what I did was I just kept going. So this friend sent me out to her newsletter. I, at the time, was working in a bar because I was between jobs, and I was earning £10 an hour, or less than, I think. So I just said, oh, I do it as a donation, because I certainly wasn't comfortable charging at that point. So she sent me out to her newsletter, and I remember the fear I had when the first person came, and it was this nice guy called Colin, and he had seen this advert that she had sent out to her newsletter of 300 people. I didn't think anyone would come. I thought she was just being nice. He phones me and says, hello, is this Lee? I understand if I send you 3 questions, you will send me the answers. And there were 2 me's going on. There was the me that was on the phone being professional to this man who had been vulnerable enough to phone my number based on the newsletter. And I went, oh, yes, that's right. You just send it to this email address. And then there was the other me that was slightly behind that person going, just, literally dying inside. And then for the next 24 hours, I remember just couldn't wait to get home from my shift to do his questions and to send them to him, and then being nervous about his response. And when he came back, and I'd never met this man, and he was just like, wow, that was the beginning. But I have to say, it took me a long time. It took me probably my first couple of hundred people to really see that I had a consistent hit rate, and to trust it, and because it was a mysterious thing. So my point to you is that your fear can be there as you take the action. It's no different to stage fright. You know, people who have stage fright, whether they're speakers, whether they're giving a speech at a wedding, whether they're walking out there to sing a song at karaoke, you still walk onto the stage. You don't think the stage fright is wrong or a reason to leave. And I think too often we forget that fear is going to be part of the journey, because we're changing our identity. If you're somebody who hasn't been a healer and you commit to being a healer, you should have some fear, because fear tends to hold our identity in place. And if you step into becoming a healer, whether you call it healer or another word, you're going to change, and change is scary for us. So the effect we might have on someone else, or the effect that we might bring to somebody else, can make us a little unnerved until we've got used to doing it. So managing fear around the doing of it was one thing. And then managing fear around the money was something that I took away at the beginning by being donation based. And that was great, because then I started to see an average price that people would pay me. So then I started to see what people felt was the right value. And at a certain point, I took the donation away and I made it that average payment. And then I said, if people want to give more, they can. So very slowly, pigeon steps, but I didn't not do the work. I agreed to do the work. And I think that's super important for any of us. Fear is normal, but it shouldn't stop you getting into the pool and swimming around a little bit. I hope that helps, and thank you for your question.
Lee, this question is about over-delivering and undercharging. How can I help prepare my clients for the financial and emotional consequences of my transition towards abundance? Like many creatives, I undercharge and over-deliver. I'm a self-employed art director, designer, and there's fear around facing a backlash, the possibility of less work or of losing the clients altogether.
Well, this is a great question, because I think it's a position that many people find themselves in. It's knowing that you have to step forward for yourself, because something in you is saying, I need to raise my prices, but not wanting to damage or hurt the current relationships that you have. The truth is, if you really feel you have to raise your prices and move forward, you're going to probably experience a couple of different things. There'll be some people who'll come with you. And my instinct tells me that some people probably know that you're undercharging, but they go with it, but they love you and your work so much, and they have the resources to give you the pay bump that they will. There might be others who you need to move on from. But this is a really tricky area. I know for me, every time I raised my prices on my personal sessions, which were what was allowing me to fund creating other work for people, I would have this emotional feeling. I'd be thinking, God, I might be pricing this person out, and I'm acutely aware of their dependency or need of me. However, what I will say to you is, at this point in my work, we affect almost, I think it's about 200,000 people a month now will see the energy update, which nobody pays for, and it's produced to a really high level, and myself and my team take quite a bit of time to get it ready, to create a written document, and it's an opportunity for me to deliver good value to people based on everything I've done that month and what I'm seeing and tracking in clients, in people. So my point to you is, you can't think too closely about who you might be losing as you feel a strong move to go forward. It's completely natural. There are emotional ties to the people that we work with and our clients, but most will understand. Even if somebody is upset, I'm a big believer in trusting the change of life. You shouldn't stay in a bad relationship if it's not serving two people. If the two of you are in constant fights, and you're like, well, I can't leave because I love them, and you're keeping each other in fight, the truth is, if you separate the relationship, not only is it going to be better for you going on, but ultimately it's going to be better for that person. So I'm a big believer in things change, we evolve, we grow. Relationships, some stay with us for a very long time, and I mean business relationships, and some are periodic. So try not to take responsibility for the universe. Take responsibility for your own feeling and your own directive that you're going to have to raise your prices. If you feel strongly about a few clients, you might cut them a break for a transitionary period. You might say, I'm going up to this amount next year. I'm doing that for all new clients now, but I'm going to freeze you at this amount, or I'm going to ask you to do a halfway medium. You can do special consideration for certain people, but trust that the universe will rearrange not only your income and clients, but also other people and their needs of who they're going to have as a designer next if they're not coming with you. I cannot tell you how many times I have helped people to raise their prices when they have fear, and I've done it myself. And it's mind-blowing how it doesn't actually lessen your abundance. And the money that comes in through those raised prices, you're going to be able to work better and give more because there's more of an energy exchange coming in. And you never know what you will use that money for good in the future. So don't deny yourself that money, and don't try and control the universe by thinking you know best that these people should be staying with you. Life is about change and evolution. So good for you.
Lee, this next question is about going from one-on-one work to group work.
Mm-hmm.
How do we go from serving a small amount of people in one-on-one situations to a larger group of people while still continuing to assist those in their unique transformation, understanding, and healing? In some ways, I can sense it may be easier to help more people shift in groups than one-on-one, which seems paradoxical, but may be true. Have you found this to be true, Lee?
Well, I like both. I love the intimacy of working one-on-one with my mentoring clients now. It's why I haven't stopped doing one-on-one, even though I could have stopped because there's enough to do elsewhere. So I love the focus of a one-on-one, but there's something about the magic of a group. And I'll tell you what the magic ingredient is with groups. It's the community. Because in a group situation, even though you have to be the right, what should I say? How do I put it? I think to be a good facilitator of a group, you have to be like a good parent. You might be invisibly steering the ship more than visibly steering the ship, but your eyes and your senses are based on, is the child growing? Oh, this is a moment where the child really needs me, and this is a moment where I need to step back and let the child find their own way. So I think with groups, what I love about it is there is a shared experience within the community. So I'm a big advocate in my groups, and it's one of the things I say at the beginning is, we are the medicine that we need in this room. In this room is the medicine that you need. And some of it's going to come here from the front of the stage, and much of it's going to come from the people sitting next to you and the stories that we share and how everybody in a group opens out. So group intimacy is very different to one-on-one intimacy, but it's perfectly natural to think that you can't translate them. And especially when you first run your first group or two, it might feel a little bit like, whoa, I know what a one-on-one group is, but this is new. Like anything, you get used to everything very quickly, and you start to learn the areas that you're really good at in running groups. And you might learn, oh, I need to be a bit better at time management, or when there's a Q&A session, I need to get a little bit better at making sure that I keep a drive and a focus, because if there's that person keeps talking for 20 minutes, you can see all the group getting antsy and they want me to be in charge and kind of wrap it up and move it on. There are things you'll learn that will be different when you're in a group situation, but the magic of the community is one thing, and the skills are applicable. What I will say about a group is it's lovely to affect many people at one time. It's a great thing to use your energy to affect many people at one time. But for me, honestly, I can't say I prefer one over the other. I just think they're different. For me, the same magic and intimacy comes through my body and is the experience that I get reflected to me when I'm one-on-one or when I'm with a group. So definitely move towards groups and see if you have a preference. And if you don't have a preference, then just enjoy both.
Lee, this question is about how comparison affects value. I have
Hmm.
this tendency to compare myself as an artist, as a woman, as a friend. I know the spice of life is our differences, especially in artistic expression. So, why is it that I keep judging myself so harshly? Especially since I do have great pleasure in what I'm doing. It seems it doesn't make much sense, but it does. Can you help?
This is a great question. And honestly, I think you've nailed it for part of our human condition, because which of us doesn't or hasn't compared ourselves at some point in life, or on a weekly basis? I think that comparison really has a lot of judgment in it, and it usually is self-judgment that is reflected. Judgment is a really tricky thing. It's funny, I just did this channel for next month's portal recording and MP3 release, and it talked about how it was talking about Kundalini. It's called Rising Life Force Rising, the era of Kundalini, 2018 to 2025. And the Z's were talking about how judgment is what holds our identity in place. And that the only reason that we have these fixed identities is because we either made a judgment in ourselves that we had to be a certain way, or someone else judged us in a certain way, in a way that made us behave differently and modify ourselves. So they said judgment is the underpinning of our identity. Now, if you are comparing yourself, there is some part of you that thinks that you having another identity or another aspect of your identity being more active in your life will make you happier, which I think is a common misconception for all of us. I remember many years ago thinking to myself, I had some comparison. I would look at some people who were really progressed in their work, and I was like, wow, they've got a team, and wow, they've got really nice production value, and wow, they've got, hundreds of thousands of followers. What must that be like? And it's interesting, now I've come to a new point. I'm really clear that while I'm happy I'm in this position, and I'm glad that some part of me knew I had to get here, the reasons to getting here weren't anything to do with those old fantasies or ideas. Because often what we do with comparison is we are taking someone else's outer world and making a belief about it that we take on as our own. For example, you might compare yourself to someone else's career and go, God, I wish I had their career. You don't know what kind of hell they're going through right now behind the scenes with accountants, being sued. So comparison can be a good indicator that there is something about that person or about their situation that we would like to become. And rather than making that a self-judgment, I'll kick myself because I'm not that, you could go, what is it about me comparing myself? Oh, okay, well, I like the way that they're presenting their creative work, and I've just told myself that I'm not that way because I don't have the funds. Okay, let's try and cancel that thought, and let's hold an intention that I'm going to present my creative work at that level too. I don't know how, I don't know when, but I'm going to cancel out the self-judgment that stops me moving forward. So comparison can be misdirected admiration, if you like, of somebody, if it's a negative. But I think for you, what really sticks out for me in your question is this idea that something is rattling your cage inside. Like you keep returning to this, I'm not happy, and will I be happy if I was like that, or if I... And the truth is, we don't really know what a new situation is going to do for us. So for you, I feel this internal pressure and judgment that probably came from somewhere else. Like, did you never feel fully valued by family, teachers, friends? Were you around competitive people in those scenarios? And so they were always pitting other people against each other, and that's what you grew up hearing. So it's always good if you've got a very strong syndrome, like you're talking about, this comparison thing is a strong repeating thing, to say, where did that come from? When did I first discover or think I wasn't good enough? What messaging and what kind of energy was I around as a younger person or growing up that taught me that, and that I can now learn to undo? But often if we make some notes about the seeds of those behaviors, we get to start to bring the pattern into our conscious mind, because it's not just something that's looping obsessively around our mind and it's all very subconscious, unconscious. we actually get to write it down. And we're often scared to do that. But you could go, why do I compare myself to other people? When did that start? And just write a few scenarios or memories or people that come to your mind. But you have to do it. Often we hear these things and go, oh, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. And then we move on. You'd be surprised if you sit down and write some of this stuff out, which is one of the things that we do in the course. It's like the worksheets are there to get you to explore each module. And there are certain questions that I deliver in the modules that are on the worksheets. And then there are additional questions that support this process of self-investigation, because when we investigate what's going on inside us, we can see it. And if we see it, we can change it. Awareness is the precursor to change. It's something the Z's said many years ago, and it made a lot of sense to me at the time. And I see the truth of that now. We have to have a breakthrough or a light bulb moment before we can know how to steer the ship a different way. So that was a long answer, but I hope it was helpful, and it was a great question. Thank you.
Lee, this next question follows right into that, what you were just saying. She asks, I value energetic work so highly, and I've seen its efficacy time and time again. However, I find it so hard to charge for my own work. Everyone I speak to says the clients and the money will come, yet it feels to me like they're not. Do you think this has something to do with my own perception of the value of my work?
It's definitely important that, I would say, for you as a growth area, you charging for your own work is going to be really important. And I would, again, going back, I know people in my life who don't need to work for money. So they donate their time to charity causes or to healing causes. And that's great. They don't need the money. They're taken care of. So this is part of their giving. But for you, two things. Number one, it sounds like you do need to be earning a living for the energy output you're putting into the world, and healing is energy. I mean, it's, it doesn't. Yes, on the one hand, you connect to spiritual energy, but that also, there are limits to how long the physical body can do that too. So for you, what I would say is, see the paradox. The paradox is you greatly value this, and yet you're struggling to receive it for yourself. At the very beginning of this broadcast, I shared with you guys about how I had to get honest with myself about the fact that I would willingly hand over money for other people's teachings or healings or experiences because I really valued what I got. Yet I was denying other people doing that to me. So I started in a donation way, and that was comfortable for me. And other people taught me the value. Like, I remember when someone sent me £50 for a reading when I was a donation-based healer. I couldn't believe it. That's about $70. I was like, oh my God, because it took me about 90 minutes to an hour and 45 minutes, including emails and maybe 2 hours. I was blown away. But he also helped me see the value he was attributing. So the good thing about donation-based healing or a sliding scale is it tends to give you a measure of what people are capable of paying and how people will value it. That can be a great thing. I would say for you to challenge yourself to charge, and it's very, very common for people to feel funny about charging money for their own services. I have a friend who's a physical therapist, a massage therapist, and when this friend went from being employed in a company that gave him a fee for his massage skill to having to ask for money himself, he was like, oh, I don't quite know how to ask for money. And, because we're often not used to this. If we've been employed, if we've not been an entrepreneur around our own work and our own worth, it's an edgy scenario, but you get better at it. So I would say to you, if you want, you could have a sliding scale. If you want, you could have a donation-based scenario with perhaps a minimum donation. But I think it's going to be very important for you to understand that if you're unwilling to really lean into this charging thing and recognize it's uncomfortable for you, but do it anyway, it's not going to improve. And if it doesn't improve, you're denying other people the value of your work. So I think of the things that I value in the world, and I'm so happy to give dollars over to them. Then there are other things that I don't value the way someone else does, and that's not really my interest. So don't decide for other people what's valuable for them and what isn't. But do decide what you might need to earn for the time and energy you're going to put into this work. So massage therapists are a good example. They can't massage 8 people a day. They just can't. Whereas I could sit and do admin for 9 hours a day. And that's the way I'm wired. Different people are different. So think of the energy it's taking for you to do this and to give this, and then equate that with what you might need to earn on a daily basis. And even if you don't come out the gate charging that much, say to yourself, okay, if this builds up, if my sessions build up over the next 6 to 12 months, my ultimate aim would be to be charging $125 for a 1-hour session. I'm not going to start there. I'm a bit nervous, but that's going to be what I would ultimately like to earn. And then if I was doing 2 sessions a day, that'd be great. So have a target and recognize your comfort zone is going to be a little uncomfortable, and that's okay, but you won't get used to this unless you push yourself a little bit. So good luck. You can do it. Oh, and by the way, quickly, I will say, ask friends for help. It's no different to having friends help you with your dating profile. If money is a weak area for you, or asking for money is an area that you're triggered by, ask a friend, say, hey, can I just run my prices by you? And having support from other people helps take that kind of mind looping out into the world. Sorry, Amanda. Thank you.
This next question is about the relationships that you have around you. So, but on the negative side, okay. How do you maintain knowing your value when surrounded by people or situations that are devaluing, and people who either directly or passive aggressively tell you you are not valuable?
You change your people. Yay, easy. I mean, it's not easy, is it? Because often if those relationships are family or you're very entrenched, this is a great question because you yourself are identifying the problem in your question. And you are quite right. That is going to be a problem. And unless you start introducing other people into your life who are more positive and more affirming of who you are, it's going to be very difficult for you to really raise your value. One of the things about our value is what our community tell us. So yeah, if I've had parents and friends who have always bullied me about the way I look or about the fact that they call me stupid, and that's all I know, and that's all community is affirming to me, I'm going to become a product of that community affirmation. This is why personal development work is so important, especially when you've gone through a trauma or these kinds of relationships have been your norm. Give your attention and your time, and I would say this to you, you don't want to just look at your value, you want to look at your value, and you want to look at what some would call toxic relationships, what some would call bullying relationships, what some would call abusive relationships. You know, pick your word, but you also are going to need to look into finding your own sense of self-worth after relationships that have been designed to erode it. The only reason somebody ever puts someone else down is to try and get a false sense of self-worth for themselves. It's that superiority fix, which is a very cheap drug, and it lasts, about an hour or maybe a day for some people. And the problem is you have to keep leaning into that drug by making someone else feel bad about themselves. So for you, what I would say is 2 things. Number 1, the great thing about your question is you're already identifying there's a problem and you're seeing it's going to be a problem. So you're going to have to go against that and not really probably share with your family and friends, whoever these people are, what you're doing. Go off on the left and do as much of it privately as you can, but also recognize not just your value in your work, but your value in your life, and everything is going to depend on you changing some of those relationships, standing up for yourself in some of those relationships, perhaps leaving some members in these relationships, and also bringing in new people that are more representative of self-worth for you. So it's really important, this question that you're asking, and it's a really important change to go, okay, this is intense, but I'm going to give this a year, and I'm going to really focus some energy, some intention, and some actions on making this happen, because your life does depend on it. The quality of your life and who you are does depend on you having the right kinds of reflections coming at you. So You can do this, and good luck, and don't give up. Just keep going and you will find your way out. I can tell by the energy of your question that you know that there's a light on the other side. And that's a great place to be, because some people don't even know that, or they don't believe it. So push through. And if I were you, I would get some kind of therapist, counselor, person, as and when you can afford to do that, just to kind of help you unpick some of this stuff. Because having someone in your corner while you're going through it will be very, very beneficial.
Lee, this question's about receiving compliments. No matter how people compliment me or my work, I always seem to feel embarrassed or even ashamed when they do. I can never really hear, much less absorb what they've said. It makes me sad, and I feel that I deserve to hear the praise I've rightly earned. I wonder why I can't do this.
Are you from England? And I know there are some other countries that have that issue too. I say that because I grew up, in England, and lived there till I was 36. And there it's kind of distasteful to be praised, or to be praised. There's a bit of an uncomfortableness among the Brits, and it's often called tall poppy syndrome. I know in Australia that's a thing too, and probably a few other countries. So what I would say to you about this is two things. Number one, here's the good news. People who are absorbing the praise of others, that doesn't go so well for those people's personalities either. So it's not necessarily that you need to be absorbing a lot of praise. And I know for me personally, I will just share this, that honestly, I know this might sound odd, but I was about 4 or 5 years into the work I was doing, and had a following around the work online, and people were listening to my recordings and all that kind of stuff. And there was a day when it just kind of struck me that I was quite good at what I did. Because that wasn't really where my focus was. I mean, don't get me wrong, my focus was at ensuring the quality. I like many creatives, I have that thing of, I want this to be as good as it can be, and what can I summon in myself and to make it as good as it can be. That's just, having a certain standard that you want to reach. But I think it's quite common that you don't necessarily always know the value of what you're doing for others. So I don't think we have to overly track that. I'll give you an example. Think of people's funerals. I know at funerals, when you hear the effect that somebody had on a whole community of people, perhaps people you didn't know, it's quite amazing. You're like, wow, that was an extraordinary person. So I think all of us, every single day, are doing things in the world that we're not all seeing what we're all doing. But if we were able to see what everyone was doing, it'd be like, wow, that's pretty cool. So I don't know about rightfully earning the praise, but because it's great if people praise you. That's a lovely thing, but it's not a given. And I would say to you, you have identified there is a part of you that if you could let some of that praise in, instead of fight it or feel shame about it, you're going to become a lot more powerful. So I would say, look at shame here. It's something I really had to look at. And I think shame comes for a lot of people. And I think shame is a kind of internalized, oh, I'm not worthy. It's a separation act. So we're pulling away from something someone wants to give us. And the best example I can give you, and I know many of you will identify with this, have you ever turned up somewhere and in the morning you looked in the mirror and you're like, oh God, I'm not looking very good. My hair's not very good. Oh, I look older. Oh, I'm looking a bit fat in the face, or, whatever the thing is for you. And you get into the party and they go, oh, wow, you look really well. And you bat it away. Oh, no, I don't. No, I don't. I look really old. That is the first thing to stop doing. Even if you think it, you learn to keep your mouth shut and not negate the praise that someone else is giving you, because then you're denying their experience and you're making it all about you, and you're living in a very self-obsessed loop about your own appearance. So it's the same with your work. It's wonderful if your work affects people really well, but you're not doing it for to sit down and really reflect on the effect. That might feed you for 5 seconds. I'm thrilled if people get stuff from my work, but I create my work because I'm compelled to create my work, not because I'm compelled to please others or see what the effect is, because I didn't know what the effect was. I didn't know this was possible. So for you, I would work on shame. I would work on receiving praise just as an area, but don't let it stop you doing what you're doing, because doing what you're doing will also be the remedy to this area. And the more you get used to the opposite, which is praise or thanks, the more it will start to balance out inside you, which is why being an entrepreneur or a creator is a wonderful growth opportunity for you. Not just the people you're serving. With what you create, you're going to change so much, and it's a beautiful thing.
Lee, this next question is someone who's applying for jobs that tend to be a bit low for their skills. When I apply for jobs, I tend to aim low, going for jobs I have a proven track record with, and despite my skills and qualifications, I usually play it safe, earning well below what is probably my true earning value. I've recently completed a master's course and was advised by my tutors I could get a job doing something that could pay more and be more interesting, although I'm feeling self-doubt, fear, and the limits of my own self-perceptions. Could you please speak to how I might be able to step beyond these limitations and into my true potential?
Great. Comfort zone, comfort zone, comfort zone. So other people are affirming to you, as you just said, your master's professors, other people are affirming to you that you should step up. Your inner self is going, I'm scared to step up. This is often where people stop and sit down and they go, oh, I'm scared to step up. That means I should trust the fear. It's the stage fright thing. You know, you get nervous when you've committed to do the karaoke song. But often what happens for people with karaoke is they get up there and then they do it and they get this rush of energy because all the fear released and turned into something else. And then they want to do it again. So for you, as is often the way for all of us, your answer is in your question. You're just going to have to be willing to be uncomfortable with your own doubt, your own fear, your own low self-perception, while you apply for things that are going to help you break that pattern, because staying in those comfortable jobs is not going to help you break the pattern. It's keeping you under the life force energy that is actually available to you. And there is a reason that we are scared to do things that are breakthroughs for us. I remember many years ago kind of naming it the contraction before the expansion. I noticed for myself, I noticed it in other people, that right before a breakthrough in your life, or right before meeting a new love, or right before going into a party that you're not sure you should go to and you're nervous about, but actually you go in there and it's fantastic and you meet some great people, we can get a little contracted. Think of kids going to parties. It's quite normal for the parent to take the kid to the party and the child's like standing against the wall, all terrified when they first walk in. And the parent's going, I don't understand. Johnny's been talking about this all week and he's been telling me like he's been dying for this party and now he's up against the wall. Yeah, because he's excited about it. There's a lot of energy around it. But as he walks into it, everything goes, ugh. Everything pulls back before everything opens out. So that pull back and that fear is an indicator of something you're going to step through. So the good news for you is you know what your current status quo is like and you're not loving it. And there's a part of you that's like, there's more than this. The other good news for you is other people are telling you to do exactly what it is you know you need to do. So other people are agreeing that you are in alignment with more. Now you're just going to have to take the inner part of you that wants to talk you out of aligning with more into the job interview, the job application, and work that muscle a little bit. And to see that as progress, not to see whether you get the job or not as failure or success, but to pat yourself on the back. It's going to be huge for you to start to put yourself out there into those bigger positions, because it won't just free up life force in the area of owning your value and earning your worth. It's going to free up life force for you in every area of your life. So go for it and good for you.
Lee, this question's about whether you should tell people about your plans for expansion. Should I be telling others, my friends and family members, about things I've been planning and doing and what my intentions are for doing them? Or should I keep the new goals, projects and changes to myself? I've heard that others who are birthing new ideas and intentions feel they should keep them to themselves and not share what they are thinking and doing for fear that other people's energy and attention will weaken the outcomes. Is that really possible? Would I be leaving myself open to fall under attack by those who wish to keep me where I am and not allow me to move on in my life with my life and aspirations?
Well, what's interesting about your question is it's a bit of an either or. You're saying, I've heard some people say they have fear about it because of X, Y, and Z. I'm not sure. So the quick answer is try it out and see how it goes. Share with some family, share with some friends, see if you have a positive or negative experience, and then you will know whether because other people have fears and they're not necessarily true for everybody. I have creative friends who go, I'm working on this project and I'm not telling anyone for 9 months. I'm not that kind of creative. However, what I have learned is that the visionary part of me that has ideas, that has creative ideas, needs to know when it's time to talk to various people about it. Because there was a time when, whether it was friends or even the team in my company, the visionary in me would just kind of do this and talk about everything. And of course, what you learn is you're not going to execute everything. Sometimes you get a million visionary ideas and you're really only going to execute a few because there's only room to make a few ground. But all of the multiple ideas that you had, they feed into the pot. So somehow they either come into it or they were just fuel to get you to the next idea that you really are going to make happen in the world. So I think it's very personal. It really depends on how supportive your friends and family are. And ask yourself, what's my goal in doing this? Am I looking for support? Am I looking for them to collaborate? If you have a goal in mind, great. And if it's just dinner party talk, then great. But I also hope that you would be of a mindset that and any of us would be like this, that if somebody pours, oil all over your idea, let's say you're at a dinner party and go, I've had this great idea for a book and I'm going to write it and it's called this and it's about this. And if someone went, well, I think that's a stupid idea, that you would say, well, good for you. I guess you won't be buying it because art's subjective. Everything we create is subjective. Not everybody on this planet is for everybody. Even popular people in our culture who are known by many, you can always find someone who says, oh, I can't stand Oprah. Well, I don't know if I've heard that one very much, but I've heard a couple of people who kind of don't like Oprah. And it always surprises me as a fan of hers. And, I'm one of the many who think, just really grateful for her presence on this earth. So there will always be someone who won't be a fan of what you're doing. So hold your own core around it. And it's good to be able to sit at that dinner table. And if someone is negative, to just kind of gently bat it back. Not punch them in the face, but just kind of go, just reflect to them the negativity of their opinion and how it's not necessarily welcome. So I hope that helps and good luck.
Lee, we've got time for one last question.
Great.
This one is, I do tarot readings, but I think what I really offer people is a sacred space in which they are listened to with love and within which intuitive guidance and the wisdom of my lifetime of study, I'm 65, can surface. I also write free blogs that are appreciated. How can these things be valued and put into products? And even should they be?
Well, this is a great question. I love it. Here's my instinct. Blogs are great because they really help us share knowledge and value. And particularly if you have a leaning towards writing, which a lot of people do, they're a great thing. I would be curious, given you have this wealth of brilliant experience with tarot, which is very popular. I love tarot. It was one of the first tools that I got exposed to at age 17. And I think I think I was even 15, and I think it's a wonderful divination tool, and it's known worldwide. So my first thought for you is, if you have this gift of writing, would it interest you to create a book on tarot? And perhaps some of your blogs, if they're already covering that topic, go into it. But you're also creating a guide to tarot that perhaps you're not seeing out there in the world. So you might have seen some great books, but you might say, well, there isn't really a quick and easy guide to tarot, or there isn't the guide to tarot that's got a real slant and emotional healing. So the emotional healing tarot guide, you might want to create a deck and have words. So I'm only pulling ideas here without being able to ask you some questions and investigate where your passions lie. I would say that I'm a big believer in have a way that your work can affect people for free. Number one, I just like that. I think that's the gift of the internet, and I love that for the people who really either can't afford to buy a service or a product that you're offering, but also for the people who aren't interested in doing that, who don't value anything else you're doing. It's a great way to reach people and affect people. So I don't think there is a right or a wrong, but it sounds to me like you've got a really nice hybrid between free blogs and tarot reading services. So you might want to put a middle block in. Perhaps the middle block is a tarot monthly membership club for people who want to increase their experience of being a tarot reader, or they might want to have a monthly tarot reading specifically targeted on that little exclusive group. Perhaps there's other things you do in there. So I certainly don't think there's anything wrong with finding something that you feel passionate about offering that you attribute a price tag to, but it doesn't necessarily have to be your current free blog offering. But given you brought that up, there's something about writing for you that's very clear. So books are a great way to reach people. And you may even do in, let's say, your monthly membership club, part of it is a more extended piece of writing. So there are many different ways to bring your skills to people. And there are many different ways that people like to receive things. Some people love audio, some people love podcasts, some people love videos, some people love writing. So the key really to scaling your work and to going beyond the one skill that you might be known for or already successful in is going, how can I take what I teach in a one-on-one setting into a blog or into an audio? How can I offer it in other ways at different price points? That would be a wonderful thing for you to do at this stage of your career. So thank you for that question. Amanda, thanks so much. They were fantastic questions that you chose.
They were really wonderful. I feel very inspired by the answers myself. So yeah, thank you to everyone.
Yeah. And we know that some of you on this broadcast tonight are actually already taking the course with us. You've already signed up. And we can't wait to get started next week. And the modules will come out. The private Facebook group will be running. We'll have the Own Your Value Labs. So we'll have the calls where you guys get to ask your questions about what's coming up. So we're really excited to see you experience the material and take this energetic journey. And for those of you who've joined tonight for this broadcast, if you wanted to join us for Own Your Value, we have a discount offer that's available. It's 25% off the course, which is $100 off if you join by the start date. So if tonight has felt good to you and you check out the webpage and see all of our modules and you would like to join us in there, we would love to have you. And if you just popped in to get some insight, or you were one of our questioners tonight, thanks so much. I think the most important thing I could say, and this is going to be the final module of the course, which actually will be a channel that is, I'm going to have a channeled message from the Z's that's for Own Your Value. It talks about bringing your value to the world and why it's needed. And the title of that is You Are Needed and Now Is Your Time. And I think that's a really important thing for everyone on this call to remember. When I began, it was 2004, and I later learned in some research last year that only 1 billion people were using the internet in 2005. Today, we're just about to hit 4 billion, and it's predicted that that number will be at 5 billion by 2020, so 2 years from now. And that number just projects to get bigger and bigger as you go through the next few years, 2022. So the thing I'm a big advocate of is we all have something to offer. The world needs many different voices. You know, think of yourself and the amount of different singers you might like, or different authors, or different actors, or teachers. We like to learn from multiple voices because all points of experience come through those different voices. So you're one of the many, and that's why you're needed, and now is your time. So this value journey you will go through will actually really help other people. I can't tell you how many, in the last 3-4 years especially, And this got pointed out to me. It's why I ended up teaching this stuff. I would get really passionate about helping my colleagues with their work because I'd been learning so much and I'd gone through such a growth trajectory that it was quite easy for me to sit there with somebody and help them piece their business together or help them get over an issue they had about pricing and explain why moving their pricing around and how to do it was going to affect the whole. So that's kind of why I ended up doing this course. And what I have seen is that because of the journey I've gone through and what I've learned, I'm now able to offer that out. That's what you'll be doing. You might be a leader in your family or your friend group or your community around owning your value. And at the moment, that might be a bit scary because you might be like, oh, is my sister going to attack me if I earn more money? She might attack you now. But when you're helping her out financially next year, and then maybe in 2 or 3 years, when she herself has started to go, oh, my sister did it, maybe I can do it. You never know what your growth will do for other people, but you can't stop your own growth because of your fear of what other people will think. Then we're surrendering our soul to the opinions of others. And we're here for soul growth. I really believe that. And I get it. It's not always easy. I have had so many ups and downs doing this work. I've had the days where I'm like, I don't want to be a business person, and really where, I mean, I know I'm making light of it now, but I've had those days where I was like, God, do I even want to carry on with this? And that was as recently as a few years ago. So the thing about it is, if you stick with it, it's a little bit like a self-growth puzzle that you're working out, and your growth affects others too. So that's where I'm going to leave you tonight. But thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Thank you from myself, Amanda, and Noah, who has been technically running this call, and Marty and everyone else in the Lee Harris Energy team for being here with us tonight. It's been a pleasure, and good luck for you on the next leg of your journey. And for those of you in the course, we can't wait to get started with you next week. See you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.